Hello, fellow book lover. Today, let's talk about James Mustich's 1,000 Books to Read Before You Die 2018 book, which is what it says on the tin, a book, a compendium of 1,000 books that James Mustich has put forward that you must read before you die. No, actually, that's not it. And there's funny that there's a part of me that wants to lash as a reader, as a I want to be driven on to read. It's like James Mustich, he was the editor of the Common Reader, a mail order catalog for like 20 years, and it's gone on to do other things. It's a mail order catalog where he spent like all that time writing about old books and new books of every subject, doing little, I guess, encapsulations. I have not actually ever picked up a Common Reader, so I don't know, but that's what I imagine, because it would be a great training for something like this, which indeed has the big sleep, and then you have a little paragraph basically describing the big sleep and why he's picked it, and then what it is, mystery and suspense, when, 1939, also by, and then it gives list of stuff, and then like, hey, if you like that, why not try The Maltese Falcon by Dashiell Hammett, or L.A. Confidential by James Elroy, and then talks about adaptations, and then a little footnote. So that's basically the structure of all the things. I was actually expecting a giant, like, a book like this where you have 1,000 books. I was expecting this big essay at the beginning, just put down his things of, this is why I am the man to say you must read these 1,000 books. But no, actually what there is a very short, a very short little just three pages of this is why I'm writing the book, and then how the book is organized, and why, and sort of the book, because I guess of the Common Reader, it's like it came up with the idea of, let's write a book about 1,000 books to read before you die, and it's very much not a prescriptive book. And indeed, it's, he was trying to struggle with, like, how to organize it about. It's like he's coming at it from a bookseller point of view, I have to say, in the ultimate thing. He quotes The Haunted Bookshop by Christopher Morley and says, the function of a bookseller is to spread good books about, to sow them on fertile minds, to propagate understanding and carefulness of life and beauty. And I've probably, in my carefulness of life and beauty, I've probably butchered the quote, but yeah, he kind of draws from that, and just the idea from I believe it's Edmund Wilson. As he's trying to doing it as basically kind of the miscellaneous learning and undisciplined, undirected, curious reader is what he's going for, and the idea that this is basically a bookstore with like 1,000 books in it, and it's not going to be just a bookstore about the great canon of literature, or it's not going to be all the greatest mystery books, or the great it's like it's a cross section. You want, as a good bookseller, you want something for everybody who comes in. You want something for the kid that comes in. For the kid that comes in, you want something for yes, the literary scholar, the person who's interested in biographies, people who are interested in all the genres. There's a couple of graphic novels in here. There's science fiction, mystery, horror. It's a compendium of like 1,000 books, and it's very much not. I'm saying this like I'm disappointed, because in a way I am disappointed that this isn't a book it's like insisting you must read these books before you die, or else you will die sad and ignorant and alone. Well, we're all going to die ignorant and alone, aren't we? But regardless, it's much more of a kind of a an undisciplined so undisciplined you can't actually say the word undisciplined, undirected reader. It's pretty like, yeah, man, here's 1,000 books, maybe, give them a try. They're good books. They're good books. So, yeah, it's kind of interesting. Now, the most important part of this book, is, of course, at the very back, which is the 1,000 book checklist. So you can go through the checklist and check off what you've read and count them up and maybe highlight them. But, you know, only a complete geek, a complete loser would, you know, especially if it's a library book, would photocopy that and then I highlighted all the books. Oh, look, see all the pages. I highlighted all the books that I've read. Oh, and in pink, I've got the ones of like, here's like, I've got The Road, Cormac McCarthy. Sorry, Steve and Strip Cover Lit guys. The Road does make it into 1,000 books you must read before you die. Though I guess now that you've read it, you can. But I'll put a question mark beside it because I'm like, oh, okay, I'll think about it. I'm still waiting for those response videos defending The Road, and we'll go from there. But yeah, so that's in pink to say like, oh, that's like something like, oh, you know, I should try, or I've got The Heart is a Lonely Hunter. I think I actually own that book, and it's around here somewhere. So oh yeah. Yeah. See, I held up all those books, but it's like, okay, yeah, I bought it, so it's probably something I'm going to get around to, and I'll put it in that giant pile, which perhaps was in my thumbnail of, oh God, these are all the books that I have that I should get around to. And then I've got stuff like, I've got little orange dots beside stuff of like, you know, well, I kind of tried, but I bounced off it or I didn't like it. Like Samuel Pepys, it was interesting, but I never read the whole thing. Or Gravity's Rainbow, it's like I got a certain amount of distance into it and I kind of fell off. Or Midnight's Children. I enjoyed a lot of Rushdie, and apparently like that's the best Rushdie. It's like his first Rushdie, but I never got through it. That was a good while ago. But yeah, so, and then, you know, and a complete geek would be like, okay, I read this number of books on this page, this number of books on this page. And then, you know, you would probably, a complete and utter twerp would then add up all the things. And it's like, 184 books. That's how much of the 1,000 books, to read before you die. So I've got a few books to read before I die, apparently. And, you know, it's, a part of me wants this to be the Lash, this to be Harold Bloom, his thing of what's it, the canon, the Western canon list, and saying like, you know, these are the great works of literature and you should read them and, you know, become a full and complete reader, and him doing all his defenses of, you know, the culture of resentment and but, you know. And another book, actually, Harold Bloom, if his book was on this list, I don't think it is on this list. Sorry, Harold. Well, it might be, actually. I wouldn't have ticked it because I didn't read the whole book. So I wouldn't have put it down as one of the books I've read before I die. This book, I would not put on my list of I've read this book because I enjoyed it's definitely one of these kind of reference books. I flipped through it. I kind of, what does it say about Proust? I did very well with Proust. I've read all the Proust. And actually, reading his entry on Proust, he does a really good job of summing up or giving you a kind of a taste and a flavor of the book. His 20 decades of kind of being able to write up stuff and some stuff. And I expect that, you know, the Proust one probably took him a little bit of work there. But I found after a while of just sort of flipping through and reading, it's like, it's not a book I want to read through all the way. And it's like one of these ones of like, when I got into stuff that I've never read, it's like reading summaries of book after book after book just made me a bit cross-eyed. And I don't think that's the point of this book. I think a big point of this book is the list at the end. It's funny, Harold Bloom, he also included a list at the end of his book in the Western canon, which he later disavowed because it was against the purpose of my great literary arguments for the preeminence of these writers. I'm making fun of Harold Bloom, but he's just so easy to make fun of. But I love his passion. Actually, I do love his passion. I've seen, for everyone who says that Harold Bloom is an asshole, I listened to an interview with him where the interviewer was sort of able to not trip all his defenses and get him all riled up, but actually just kind of engage him in his love of reading. And as a passionate reader, Harold Bloom is a passionate reader, and he has his own views on things and stuff like that. But it's like that kind of enthusiasm was actually rather infectious. But the point, circling back to my super organized point, was that Harold Bloom did put a list at the end of his book. And probably much to his dismay, a lot of people were ignorant dolts like myself who then flipped to the back and went, oh, okay, I've read that one, I've read that one. Oh, I haven't read that one, and stuff like that. But in some ways, I think this is what we're looking for. Like, this is such a gigantic book, but in a way, what we're looking for is the list at the end of like, okay, well, what are books? What's possible books that I could read? And I mean, it's a bonus that this thing has descriptions of the books. And I mean, it's the point. I mean, I'm semi dismayed that this book isn't trying to shame me or trying to push me along. But on the other side, I find that this is a book where I've only read 184 books in here, and I probably will read more. I know I will read more out of this list. I probably will hold. I will hold on to this. I will hold on to this. It's a handy little thing to have. I won't take it too seriously, which in some ways I actually kind of respect that they're saying, look, I'm a reader, you're a reader. This is stuff that I've enjoyed. Here's my arguments for it. But I'm not Harold Bloom speaking from on high, talking about what echoes through the ages. But that the point of these books are the lists, and much to Harold Bloom's dismay, his book became more about his list than it did about his thoughts on individual books. More like the star ratings have a tendency to kind of take over from people's reviews versus, could you listen to what I said about the book? Because the star rating is an afterthought and a thing, and you'll notice I don't do star ratings on my reviews on here, just because it would be beside the point. It's me yakking about the book. Whether I give this 3 or 5 stars, it seems beside the point. But this is a book. This book, coming back to the book versus rating systems. This book is it holds a lot of readers. It's funny. It flipped open to here to James Herriot, All Creatures Great and Small, which to me is like that was like one of my parents' books. And it's funny. My wife, Jaja, the little Austrian princess, she also she didn't read the book at all. She just went through the list. She went, oh, let me look at the list, and she went through. And I think she found that she had like about 170 books on the thing that she had read. But because I had been a super geek and gone through and highlighted the ones that I had read, she was like, oh, and most of the books that you've read, I haven't read, and I've read a whole different little set of books. So it holds different readers in it. And while there are freaks of nature out there like Steve Donoghue who can probably go, well, I've read a whole 1,000 of these books, and I could add another 1,000 books to it. For all those freaks of nature out there, those great towering Mount Rushmore dudes, there's people like myself who's like, yeah, I've read 184 books out of this thing. I'll probably read more. I'll disagree with some. It's funny because I have my little list I've got my in my super geeky thing, I've got my so close, and there's like about 20 authors that are in this book, which I've read works by, from Joseph Campbell to Triptree, Henry Miller, all these people, like 20 of them, which I've read them, but I haven't read the book that they put in here. So there's like another 20. There's some that like I argue over, just like, really, it's like, you picked Quicksilver by Neil Stephenson, which is like, that to me is the kind of the start of his downfall, his great bloating out, and like something like Cryptonomicon before that would have actually been kind of the book I would have probably picked from him. So there's still arguments to be had, which is always fun. Part of these things are to argue. Da Vinci Code is in here. Things like, it's like, well, it's Gone Girl, but the thing is, it's like, it's kind of going for, okay, we're going for commercial books, we're going for literary books, we're going for biographies. Sometimes, like, I was reading and go, Harriet the Spy by Louise Fitzhugh is in here, which is like one of my favorite books. Or I looked through here, and Betsy-Tacy, which is a big favorite of Kelly over at Books I'm Not Reading, is in here. And indeed, of these 1,000 books, 1,000 books that I must read before I die, it says, 1,000 books to read. It's soft, to read before I die. I want to put in the must. I so want to put in the must, and I struggle. It's like, what's the point of it's like, these are 1,000 books to read. Yeah, here you go. It's like, I want the must in there. I don't know what that is about. So probably because he's like, I'm ready for a fight. Come on, James Mustich. Let's have a fight. Come on, tell me I have to read something and I'll argue. It's like, and James Mustich is like, look, dude, no, I'm not here for a fight. This is a chill book. This is chill. Here's some books that you might want to read, before you die. I'm just saying, they're pretty good books. They're pretty good books, Hey, if it strikes a chord with you, you can read it. If it doesn't, yeah, fine, that's fine. And so I'm of two minds. I'm of like, I'm a combative booktuber who wants to get into a major flame war, but I'm also like, oh, hey, I'm a civilized, respectful, thoughtful, sometimes booktuber who wants to have a convivial exchange of ideas, to exchange civil thoughts on the road, by Cormac McCarthy, as has been shown on these channels. So it's like, okay, this isn't a review. I guess this isn't a review of Jay and what kind of a person he is versus this book, but I enjoyed it. I think it is a book where, for myself, I'm very happy to get it out of the library and photocopy the list and kind of flip through the pages a bit. So it's not like, an ultra complete thing, and I obviously haven't read everything through. It's very much seems to wanting to try and diffuse the whole idea of, I'm not being methodical. I'm being kind of like, hey, this is a bookstore. This is how I would stock a bookstore to appeal to from your earliest reader to the final things of life, from Betsy-Tacy to the Year of Magical Thinking, from Mouse to Fun Home to ancient, the Icelandic sagas. It's like it's a well-stocked bookstore. If I stopped in it, I would find plenty of stuff to read. So, and I'm sure James Mustich is obviously an excellent bookseller. He's sold me. I'm taking part in the Betsy-Tacy Read-a-long once that comes in from the library. So, yeah, those are my thoughts on 1,000 books to read before you die. So, hurry up. I could get run over tomorrow, so I better work on it. All right. More videos later.